Welcome back to the vlog. Today I am going to be making communion bread. What? Yeah, it's so crazy. I never imagined myself making communion bread because I always thought that only certain people, like church clergy of sorts or church leadership people, could really make communion bread. But something that I've really loved about Core is it's really made me step into so many different roles that I never imagined myself in, like cooking for a bunch of people or making communion bread or decorating a room for a special feast or being a spiritual mother or mentor, teaching, preaching, leading all kinds of outreach opportunities, recruiting, speaking, just the whole spectrum. It's been wild, and it's also been so rewarding. Part of what we do that's something really special at Core, which if you're not familiar with Core, is the School of Evangelism that really emphasizes seeing Jesus in every Christian teaching, and also an emphasis on mental health so that anyone who comes to be trained as a missionary also leaves as a more whole, healing person. Part of all of that is me doing special things like this, and I thought I'd bring you along. And if you've never made communion bread, oh my goodness, now you're gonna know how. And if you ever want to break bread and drink the cup that Jesus left for us as a beautiful ritual to remember him and engage in humility, then here you go. I don't know if you're like me, but I'm always, if I'm in the kitchen, I'm trying to multitask. So if I'm making something simple like this, then I'm also going to be making myself lunch in the background. What's really special to me about communion is truly just the significance of tradition. Like, just knowing that God is so intentional that he left us with a tradition that we can truly just soak in on a mental, emotional, spiritual way that also uses a physical thing to help us engage more deeply with. I just love it. I'm such a traditions girl. How about you? Do you love traditions? It's something that really binds community together over years and years and years, right? Over ages. I just love that he says, as often as you do this, remember me. And that to me just says that you can take part in this as often as you feel the need to, or as often as you want to just have that deeply connected moment with Jesus. I know some people take part in communion every day, every morning. Other people do it just at church. Some people do it at church, and then if they haven't been to church in a while, or if they somehow missed the service, then they'll engage with it at home on their own. Do you think that you could take part in communion whenever you feel the call to or the need to? Let me know. Okay, so I just added a bit of salt, a couple pinches maybe, 2 cups of flour. I'm gonna drizzle in some olive oil, a little bit of water. Traditionally, communion bread is not made with anything that will cause the bread to rise, leavening, yeast, anything like that. It's just gonna be some flatbread. I remember the first time I ever made communion bread. My mom actually happened to be here to visit, and I was like, okay, can you make this? Show me how. She's a deaconess and she's done it several times, I believe. And she just like, throw these things together, do it by feel, you'll be fine. And something that I really love that she did was with the leftovers, she made this amazing herb flatbread. And then she separated the sacred portion and just left that plain, just salt. And since then, it's been such a beautiful tradition for me to actually, whenever I make communion bread, to make some herb flatbread to go along with the meal that we may have before or after communion. That's become a tradition for me now that I absolutely enjoy, and that always reminds me and connects me to my family.
It's hard to be, it's hard hard to be this real. We can play our favorite song, dancing to it all night.
All right, so texturally it looks perfect for what I'm going for. It's soft and pliable. This will be perfect to roll out.
Feel something, 'cause we're both so unashamed. When
All right. It is time to slice. So I go with a little bit of a thicker bread, just because, okay, you guys, sometimes, okay. Sometimes over decades, we'll do a tradition, right? Like we'll do this tradition, but sometimes it'll morph into different things over the years. Like there's usually a tiny piece of bread, tiny little bit of juice, and that's it, right? Everyone's sitting in their pew, kind of separated, doing all the thing, and I don't know, I just love to be so traditional in the sense of like how close can we get it to how Jesus went about it and the environment, whatnot, in which he presented it. And that was around a table, it was community, it was breaking bread together, it was asking the tough questions, it was, you know, seeking truth, it was seeking understanding, it was an act of humility, all kinds of beautiful things like that. And I just specifically me, okay, like this is not generally something that people do, but I love to at least be able to have a thicker piece of bread and a little bit more juiced, just to kind of put forth this messaging of abundance rather than scarcity. And I know, like, for a church service and whatnot, like, yeah, it's more appropriate to have smaller pieces to engage with and eat quickly and partake of more quickly. But whenever we're really going back to how it was and eating together, communing together, all of those things, I love to have bigger pieces, bigger portions, and really push through the message of abundance, of there is plenty in Jesus, and it's more meaningful. It's like a little bit more tactile and a little more to engage with. So I'm going with a little bit of thicker, bigger pieces. Not too big where it's overwhelming, but just a little bit more than what's usually prepared.
I found a star, I found a star.
So we don't need much because we're a smaller group, but let's see.
Years before, and I do it all again just so.
So again, this is a sacred portion. Nothing else goes on it. It's baked. On the side, I will just coat these pieces in herbs. Like I'll do a little bit more salt on top. Maybe I'll do, I'll show you. I really love this smoked 7. This stuff is so good. I'll usually sprinkle this on top, maybe some other herbs like oregano, etc. Just to have like a kind of like this herby, spicy bread slash cracker of sorts. Really fun and yummy to have on the side. Something that's really special is to do this with somebody that you're mentoring, do this with family, do it on your own. If you're doing it on your own, have some worship music playing, connect with God as you're preparing something so sacred and meaningful and special. Pray over it, pray over the experience of the people who are going to be partaking of this, and that they will truly sense Jesus' presence, the Holy Spirit, and that they will continue to partake of Him and His blessings and His goodness and His salvation for the rest of their lives. So I'm gonna stop and just pray over this now.
You, I feel something, 'cause we're both so unashamed. We're not playing any games, yeah, it's hard to be. It's hard to be this real. We can play our favorite song, dancing to it all night.
Both are going in at 350, and I'm just gonna let them bake until I see that they're a little bit crispy, a little bit browned, and then I'll pop them out. So yeah, again, dump cook guesstimation here. No real solid measurements and time frame for you. but what I do have down for you is It's 350, okay? Just bake it at 350. You'll be fine. So I'm gonna pop those in and I will show you what they look like as soon as they're done. I found sacred traditions are just so beautiful and meaningful to me. If you're one of those, I don't know, like mile marker type of people, or if you love just anything nostalgic or sentimental, or you just really want to express your gratitude and see how far you've come, sacred traditions are literally where it's at, because they're so meaningful and you can connect with God, your spirituality, your mindset, your growth on such an incredible, meaningful way. And something that I really love to do is celebrate my baptism date. I was baptized 3 times, but that 3rd time was the time that I truly viewed the Father as Abba, Papa God. I viewed Jesus as truly my husband, and the Holy Spirit was like constantly wrecking me in the most joyous, profound ways. That day holds so much meaning. It literally was a wedding with God. And if you guys want, I'll do a whole video about my baptism, how I made it super special. And yeah, that's a day that I love to commemorate. That's a sacred tradition for me, to spend time in prayer and just really connecting with God's heart. This last year, I completely forgot that my baptism date was coming up. And I remember like the day that it happened, it was just, I just felt like God's, hold on, let me pop those things in the oven. Okay, so this year when my baptism date happened, I really felt like God was just pulling and tugging at me to spend time with him. And I really couldn't understand why. I was just like, okay, like, I'm not like, obviously I sense Holy Spirit moving and pulling me towards God, but that day was just such a significant, like, there's just this weight of like, God's presence was just so there and just calling me in. And I remember just spending some time with him, but not really understanding like why he was calling me into a special communion with him. And then the next day, my husband reminded me, he's like, babe, like, it's your baptism anniversary, like, happy birthday. And I was like, oh, like, no wonder. Like, I really in that moment understood, like, this is not a sacred tradition just for me. It's a sacred tradition that God holds in his heart as well. Like, he remembered and he knows, and he wanted to connect with me in that special way. He cares about my baptism anniversary. Like, that is just so wild to me. It just says how intentional he is and how he loves sacred tradition. So yeah, I celebrate my baptism tradition. Sometimes it's simpler, sometimes maybe I go a little bit more all out. But any other dates, like when I went on my year sabbatical from dating and focusing on my career, the day that ended, I had asked God for something really special. Actually, yeah, I asked him for a Bible verse to come to me whenever that sabbatical ended. And it was a specific verse I was praying for, and I didn't know how or when it was going to show up because I couldn't remember like specifically what day the sabbatical was ending. And I remember that verse showed up, and looking back, it was the date when the sabbatical ended, and he gave me that verse. And now that's like a sacred tradition for me to remember the day that sabbatical ended and how my prayer was answered, or the day that it started, or how he liberated me during a season of moving out of toxicity and into healing and wholeness. And all of those things are beautiful sacred traditions to mark, to celebrate their wins. Something that we really do in nervous system repair, recovery, regulation, all of that stuff is glimmers, right? We're remembering the opposite of triggers. We're training our mind and heart to really look for the good things in life, to not only just have our nervous system remember the things that were hard, but have our nervous system remember the things that were good. And it takes at least 12 to 30 seconds for your nervous system to store that good memory. whereas a negative memory will be stored immediately. And so taking time to actually engage in sacred tradition really does apply to the nervous system. The beautiful things that God has brought you through, that He's done for you, and your soul temple to be able to recognize what's good and to just dwell on that and to be healed and nourished and nurtured by that is so beautiful. So yeah, sacred traditions have a beautiful place in my heart, in my life, and I would want to encourage you to pick out some sacred moments in your life to engage with more intentionally. You could even start with communion and what it means to you and the beauty of that, and just engage more intentionally with it. Anyways, that's just my little spiel on sacred traditions, and communion is definitely one of them. But yeah, I'd love to hear what sacred traditions you have or you would like to start. All right, here we go. They are done. They're looking so beautiful.